what we have here today is we have an iPhone 8 Plus. It was this guy named Rick's, it's his daughter-in-law's phone, and we're going to fix it up for him, make it look all nice and new. It's actually in great shape. Look at that. It's in great shape. So, let's fix it up. Get it done. Right, taking the screws out. Put on my NPR here, like I always
Flying
do.
between two European countries.
A lot of politics in NPR.
And basically this plane was ordered to land in Belarus, which is effectively now becoming a rogue state very quickly. And this is very dangerous. It can't be allowed to continue or cannot be allowed to happen again.
Well, now, authorities in Belarus...
Oh, yeah, this has never been opened before. I can tell.
And that was the reason for diverting the plane. I'm just going to assume that you find that justification not credible. Is that right?
Completely unbelievable. And I'm really glad the European Council now this evening has called for an international civil aviation organization investigation. And I believe the Biden White House as well has announced their support for that too. And that has to happen as a matter of urgency. Ordinary citizens' lives are put in danger. The journalist Raman Pratasevich, who's only in his 20s, and his girlfriend Sofia Sapega were taken from that plane and detained by Belarus authorities. This is wrong, it's illegal, and quite frankly, it could happen to any of us. So we cannot allow this to happen or continue anywhere in the world.
Let me ask you, as far as you know, is there any legal authority you can think of which a country in Europe can rely on to force a commercial airplane to land before it has reached its destination?
Well, what happened here is there seemed to be a pretext used that there was a bomb on board or some sort of terrorist threat. And
they played a game. Like most politicians, they play games.
And as a result,
they call it pretext, I call it playing games. The law.
Pays for this, their airline will not be allowed into European airspace or airports. European airlines will not be able to overfly Belarus for safety. And we're going to continue and expand the sanctions that we've put in place with respect to Belarus as well. Belarus is a country which its citizens are suffering badly, and now their regime is trying to extend that suffering to citizens of other countries who have to fly over their country. This cannot be allowed to continue.
Well, let's talk about economic sanctions. I'm wondering, how effective might those sanctions be? Because Russia has long supported Alexander Lukashenko's regime, and Russia could just jump in to backstop Belarus should more sanctions be imposed, right?
Well, the sanctions will always have an effect, and I
think
have to say
that's good.
Lithuania and Estonia, who are next to Belarus and have huge experience dealing with them, I think they strongly favour sanctions, and we're willing to support that. But we want.
You notice how I always put the screws in the same place usually? That's how I keep track of everything.
Companies and corporations in Belarus in terms of the trade that they do. And I do really feel that these will have a bite, and that Lukashenko...
Yes, I can plug in the charger on this thing. It probably needs it. There we go. That should be...
Russia's role here? I mean, do you think Russia should be held accountable in some way because of this incident, because of its long support of Lukashenko's regime?
Look, I think the leaders are discussing Russia at the moment, actually, in their meeting after coming to these conclusions. We need to get to the bottom of what exactly happened. There are suggestions that there were Russian diplomats on this plane and left the flight in Minsk. We have to get to the bottom of that, and that's why it's really important that there's a ICAO investigation into this to find out what role, if any, that Russian citizens had. They shouldn't be involved in this. This is not acceptable. This can't continue. And I have no doubt that when you see the United States and the European Union apparently tonight they're really speaking effectively with one voice and with the same objectives on this, I think that will put, I would hope, unbearable pressure from Belarus and all those who support Belarus in the way that they run their particular country.
Thomas Byrne is the European Affairs Minister for Ireland. Thank you very much for joining our show today.
Thank you for having me on.
When many music fans saw hip-hop, it was through the eyes of photographer Chi Madhu. He was a photographer responsible for indelible images of some of the biggest names in hip-hop. He has died at age 54. The cause of his death was not announced. NPR's Anastasia Tsulkas has more.
Chi Madhu told Hypebeast in 2017 that his talents matched the moment in hip-hop.
A bunch of young people doing some things that's really like world-changing. So I wanted to be a part of it. And I had a skill that was neat, that I could take a picture, right? And so because of that, I became a part of this movement because I was the one showing people what it looked like.
Madhu translated those groundbreaking sounds into iconic, intimate images. Biggie Smalls posing near the Twin Towers, both now long gone. Tupac Shakur smoking. The covers for albums by Mobb Deep, Method Man, and Snoop Dogg. Photos of Mary J. Blige, Q-Tip, and so many others. And more than 30 cover images for the hip-hop Bible, The Source. Madhu was born in Nigeria and raised in New Jersey. He picked up a camera for the first time as a college student at Rutgers University, and he soon found his way to The Source, where he befriended so many emerging hip-hop superstars right as their music was pressing towards global omnipresence. Madhu was a gifted photographer in other realms, too. He made arresting images around the world, including in his native country, as well as Yemen, Myanmar, and Bangladesh. Whatever the subject, Madhu said his aim was to be empathetic, as he said on an undated video interview on his website.
For my kind of work, I think empathy is really critical. I'm a documentarian, so I go in with the people. I mean, my hip-hop background is really part of how I work. I go from people's neighborhoods to the stage, to the studio, every aspect of their lives. So a documentarian, the only way you can move around in those environments is if you empathize with the people. You don't necessarily have to be from them, so I don't think you have to be from the hood to photograph in the hood, but you must understand it.
That understanding came shining through in the work Chi Madhu made. Anastasia Tsilkas, NPR News, New York.
Tupac.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News. In Indianapolis, a medical device company is taking an innovative approach to its manufacturing. It's building a grocery store in the same neighborhood as its new manufacturing plant. Side Effects Public Media's Farah Yusri reports that the goal is to help attract and retain workers living in a food desert.
What do fresh vegetables and medical devices have in common? It's this area on the northeast side of Indianapolis where Cook Medical will make needles, catheters, and a range of other medical devices used at hospitals all over the world. But this construction is for something different.
It was never part of our business plan to have a grocery store.
That's Pete Youngson, president of Cook Medical, a multi-billion-dollar family-owned manufacturer based in Bloomington. His company is locating one of its manufacturing sites to Arlington Woods, an underserved Indianapolis area. It's planning to hire as many as 100 local workers.
And one of the things that we heard from so many people was that food access was a problem. They had 5 grocery stores leave in the last 5 years. And so you have 100,000 people with no access to groceries.
So, Cook Medical decided to spend nearly $2.5 million to build a 15,000 square foot grocery store. It will serve the community and maybe help retain employees. Terry Coleman has been living in this predominantly African-American neighborhood for more than 34 years.
When you need a gallon of milk, you got to travel 5 miles to go. But the new marketplace is coming. We're only about maybe 5 minutes from there. So it's really going to enhance the area. And we're really excited about it. That store is going to be a part of our community.
And here's where the story takes another twist. Cook Medical will not run this store for long. Instead, it will turn it over to Michael McFarland and Marcus Williams, 2 young local entrepreneurs. The 2 men are in their early 30s and are childhood friends who live in this neighborhood. They've seen the challenge that food access poses, especially to elderly residents like McFarland's grandmother.
She's not able to get to a place that has adequate food supply. She's relying on family members right now. She's an independent lady, and sometimes she might want to go to the grocery store, but it's 10, 15 miles away.
A few years ago, Williams and McFarland started a small convenience store at a nearby strip mall. After grocery stores closed here one by one,
It became a lifeline for many residents. Soon they will shut it down and start managing the new grocery store when it opens next year through a rent-to-own model.
So our projected sales, we should be able to pay it off in about 2 to 4 years. So that's not bad to own your own grocery store.
Harvard Business School professor Kash Rangan says if it's done right, this can be a win-win for everyone.
The positive aspect of this is you're solving a real problem.
He sees the project as a unique partnership between a business and the community. By responding to the community's specific needs, even if they don't align with the company's core business, companies can drive change and help solve real social and economic problems.
This is a brilliant model where they're really being used in the community. So they'll take the next step. It's a new model, it's a unique model, but they have to go the extra mile for it to be successful.
Rangan says ongoing support from the company will be crucial if building a grocery store in the food desert will be something more than a corporate vanity project. Marcus Williams and Michael McFarland say they have a personal vested interest in both the community and the store and are bent on its success. For NPR News, I'm Farah Yusri.
And this is All Things Considered from NPR News. This is KCUR 89.3 NPR in Kansas City. I'm Lori Arbor. It is 5:48, and up next on All Things Considered, the debate over whether transgender females should be allowed to play women's sports has become increasingly politicized. Now, one transgender athlete and researcher is trying to forge a middle ground with science. We'll hear her story starting in 2 minutes. And in the KCUR News Update, which will be at 5:48, Missouri has rather at 6:04. It's 5:48 right now. Our stories today: Missouri has a historic new Supreme Court judge, and the governor of Missouri has weighed in on Kansas City's recent changes to police funding. Those stories and more with KCUR's Noreen Ujiyadeen at 6:04. I got it. Support for KCUR comes from Thesonian Partners Advertising Marketing Digital, the little agency that roars, serving Kansas City businesses since 1975. Details on services that can help your business grow are online at thesonianpartners.com. And Martin Pringle Attorneys at Law, helping foster new ideas and ventures, focusing on unique challenges faced by entrepreneurs and startups. Doug Silvius and Kate McKinney lead their Kansas City Overland Park team. Details are online at martinpringle.com.
On the next Fresh Air, Donnie Walton, whose debut novel, The Final Revival of Opal and Nev, is about an unlikely music duo from the early 1970s. Opal is a black feminist from Detroit who is Afro-punk before that term existed. And Nev is a withdrawn, goofy, white British guitarist. Join us.
Fresh Air is tonight at 7, and later, the murder of George Floyd made waves across the country. Now, a year later, we're taking a look back at what's changed and how people are feeling. Listen for a rebroadcast of 9:29, the minutes that moved Kansas City. It's a KCUR News special tonight at 8. This is KCUR 89.3 NPR in Kansas City.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Ari Shapiro.
And I'm Elsa Chang. The debate over whether transgender female athletes should be allowed to play girls' and women's sports has exploded this year. More than 30 states have introduced bills that would ban them from participating. The issue is emotionally charged, and it's hard to find a middle ground. But NPR's Tom Goldman reports on a pioneering researcher trying to get there.
With the simple act of signing his name, Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves turned the debate over transgender female athletes into reality.
Senate Bill 2536, the Mississippi Fairness Act, is now law.
The law banning transgender athletes from high school and university female teams is scheduled to take effect this year. The legislation Reeves signed in March and other similar state bills cite science to make the case that after puberty, transgender female athletes have an absolute advantage over cisgender female athletes, even after therapy to reduce the powerful hormone testosterone. And therefore, the trans athlete should be banned from female sports. But none of the lawmakers behind these bills reached out to Joanna Harper.
My official
title is PhD researcher at Loughborough University.
Unofficially, Harper's a scientist in the middle of a debate that's being waged at the angry extremes between those who want to ban and those who want blanket inclusion. Any person who identifies as female can play women's sports. The banning side doesn't want to hear this.
In most sports, after hormone therapy, it is perfectly reasonable to allow trans women to compete against cisgender women.
That's because the therapy, Harper says, can make the playing field more level, even though trans women still can retain advantages like strength and size after transitioning. She believes hormone therapy should be required at high levels of sport, and that restriction angers some on the other side.
There are people who consider me a traitor to trans people.
What she is a pioneer in transgender research, which Harper never intended to be. 17 years ago, she started taking pills to add estrogen and block testosterone as part of her transition from male to female. She also prepared to change athletically. At one time, she was ranked among the top male distance runners in her native Canada.
Within 9 months of starting hormone therapy in 2004, I was running 12% slower.
Which both bothered her as a competitor and intrigued her as a scientifically curious person. So she started collecting data. She got race times from 8 transgender women before and after hormone therapy. One of the effects of reducing testosterone is reducing hemoglobin, which carries oxygen-rich red blood cells throughout the body. It provides fuel for endurance athletes, and with less, the athletes slow down, which is what happened in Harper's study. Collectively, the women were more than 10% slower after therapy.
And that's an important number because that's the difference between serious male distance runners and serious female distance runners. 10 to 12% sort of range.
In 2015, she published her data in the first paper on transgender athletes. She then wrote the book Sporting Gender and helped sports organizations like the International Olympic Committee craft policies in the middle, inclusive of transgender female athletes and restrictive by requiring them to undergo hormone therapy. Dr. Eric Villain, a Washington, D.C.-based geneticist and expert on sex differences, said Harper's research has been groundbreaking.
Good news. Looks like it's going to be all right.
On trans athletes, I don't see that there is any kind of fear to have that suddenly the world of sports is going to be topsy-turvy and very unfair for all women out there.
It's harder to assess the impact with younger trans athletes. High schoolers develop at different rates, making it tough to create one-size-fits-all rules. Plus, the numbers are so small. Harper says transgender
all right,
people
so
make up less than
this
2%
was a
of the
complete,
population,
utter success.
And trans kids are 1/6 as
Really
likely
happy
as
about that.
cisgender
Good to
kids
go.
to go out for school sports. Still, the debate rages, and Harper's goal of pulling people toward the middle continues. Since 2019, she's been at Loughborough University,
another one
a prominent sports science school
fixed
in England.
and in the books.
Harper says
Thanks
the
a lot.
science of transgender athletes
See you later.
still is in its infancy. She's broadening her research to different